The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a dark omen against the stars. Its crystalline hull caught the sunlight and threw it back in sharp rainbow patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. The ship was 3 kilometers long and shaped like a giant sword, its edges sharp enough to cut space itself. Inside the United Nations headquarters in New Geneva, President Sarah Martinez sat at the head of a long table. Around her, the faces of Earth's leaders showed worry and anger in equal measure. They had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since humanity had made contact with what called itself the Galactic Council. The doors at the far end of the room opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador HFY entered, and several people around the table shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The alien was tall, nearly 3 meters high, and made entirely of what looked like living crystal. Its body caught the room's lights and split them into dancing colors on the walls. When it moved, tiny musical notes seemed to ring out from somewhere deep inside its chest. "Humans of Earth," HFY began, its voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm, "I bring you the final decision of the Galactic Council." President Martinez kept her face calm, though her hands were clenched under the table. "We're listening, Ambassador. The Council has watched your species for 3 of your years now," HFY continued, moving to stand before the large display screen at the front of the room. With a gesture, the screen came alive with images of human ships and colonies scattered across nearby star systems. "What we have seen troubles us greatly." The alien touched the screen and the images zoomed in on various scenes. Human mining operations on asteroid belts, military ships patrolling between worlds, construction of what looked like weapon platforms around colony worlds. "Your kind expands too quickly," HFY said. "In just 200 of your years, you have gone from a single world to 27 colonies. This rate of growth is dangerous and unstable." General Harrison, Earth's top military commander, leaned forward. "We're just trying to find new homes for our people. Earth is getting crowded." HFY's crystal head turned toward the general and tiny lights flickered deep inside its face. "Growth is acceptable, but your methods are not. You bring weapons everywhere you go. You build military bases before you build schools. You treat space as if it belongs to you alone." "We defend what's ours," Martinez replied firmly. "Any species would do the same." "Would they?" The alien's voice rose slightly, creating a sound like glass breaking. "The Council has 47 member species. We have lived in peace for over 3,000 years. We settle disputes with words, not weapons. We share resources instead of fighting over them. This is how civilized beings behave." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone could feel the weight of what was coming next. HFY touched the screen again and new images appeared. These showed massive alien ships, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect formations around various worlds. The ships were beautiful in their own way, but their size and number made them terrifying. "The Council controls over 2 million worlds," the alien continued. "Our combined fleets number more than 50,000 ships. Each of our vessels is larger and more advanced than anything your species has ever built. We tell you this not to threaten, but to help you understand reality." Defense Minister Chen spoke up from across the table. "Are you trying to scare us, Ambassador?" "I am trying to save your species from making a terrible mistake," HFY replied. "The Council has been patient with humanity because you are young. We remember what it was like when our own species first reached for the stars, but patience has limits." The alien moved closer to the table, and the musical sounds from its body grew quieter, more serious. "The Council has voted. By a count of 47 to 0, we have decided that humanity's expansion must be controlled. You have 30 standard galactic days to comply with our requirements." Martinez felt her heart sink but kept her voice steady. "What requirements?" HFY gestured, and a new document appeared on the screen. The text was in perfect English, but the words felt like physical blows as Martinez read them. "First," the alien said, "all human military activities beyond your solar system must cease immediately. Second, you will surrender administrative control of 13 of your colony worlds to Council oversight. We will choose which ones. Third, all future human expansion must be approved by the Council in advance. Fourth, Earth will accept a permanent Council monitoring station in orbit around your homeworld." The silence in the room was complete. President Martinez could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. "And if we refuse?" she asked quietly. HFY's crystal form seemed to grow brighter for a moment. "Then the Council will take corrective action. Your colonies will be occupied by Council forces. Your ships will be disabled or destroyed. Earth itself will be placed under direct council rule until your species learns to behave in a civilized manner. General Harrison stood up slowly, his face red with anger. You're talking about conquest. About enslaving the entire human race. We are talking about guidance, HFY corrected. Many young species go through this phase. They expand too quickly, become too aggressive, threaten the stability of civilized space. The Council has helped dozens of species learn to control these impulses. In time, perhaps humanity will be ready to join us as equals. How long is in time? Asked Dr. Voss, Earth's chief scientist. Usually between 500 and 1,000 years, the alien replied casually, as if discussing the weather. The words hit the room like a physical force. 1,000 years of occupation, 1,000 years of being treated like children by alien overlords. Martinez stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Ambassador, you need to understand something about humans. We don't respond well to ultimatums. HFY tilted its head, creating a sound like wind chimes. Your response is irrelevant, President Martinez. The mathematics are simple. You have perhaps 200 ships total. The Council has 50,000. You control 27 worlds. We control 2 million. You have existed in space for 2 centuries. We have maintained galactic peace for 30 centuries. There is no scenario in which resistance benefits your species. Maybe not, Martinez said, walking around the table to face the alien directly. But there's something you should know about humans, Ambassador. When someone tries to put us in chains, we don't calculate odds. We don't consider whether resistance is logical. We fight. The crystal being's lights flickered in what might have been amusement. Your spirit is admirable if misguided. But spirit alone cannot overcome such overwhelming force. The Council fleet assigned to your correction consists of 12 different species and over 2,000 ships. They are already moving toward your space. 30 days, Martinez said. It wasn't a question. 30 days, HFY confirmed. Use that time wisely. Accept the inevitable. Save your species unnecessary suffering. The alien turned and walked toward the door, its crystal feet ringing against the floor like small bells. Just before leaving, it paused and looked back. For what it is worth, President Martinez, I hope your species makes the intelligent choice. The universe has room for humanity, but only if humanity learns its proper place. The door closed behind the alien with a soft whisper. For a long moment, nobody in the room moved or spoke. Finally, General Harrison broke the silence. Well, he said grimly, I guess we know where we stand. President Martinez was still staring at the door where the alien had disappeared. 30 days, she said quietly. They think that's enough time for us to roll over and surrender. Madam President, Defense Minister Chen said carefully. The numbers they quoted, 2,000 ships just in their advance force. Martinez turned to face the room full of Earth's leaders. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something that would have surprised Ambassador HFY. I want every ship we have recalled to Earth immediately, she said. Every colony, every outpost, every mining station. Bring them all home. You're thinking of surrendering? Asked Dr. Voss. The president's smile was sharp as a blade. No, Doctor. I'm thinking of war. Admiral Thexmore of the Hegemony Navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with satisfaction. Around his ship, the combined Council fleet moved in perfect formation through space. 2,000 vessels from 12 different species all working together like parts of a great machine. The alien admiral was proud of this fleet. His own people, the Hegemony, provided 400 ships. The crystal-bodied Vorthak had contributed 300 of their sword-shaped vessels. The gaseous Whisper Collective had sent 200 of their sphere ships that moved like living clouds. Every species in the fleet was older and wiser than the humans they were about to correct. Admiral, his communication officer reported, we are approaching the human colony system designated Kepler Station. Thexmore nodded his great head. The Hegemony looked somewhat like giant lizards, but with 4 arms and skin that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, his skin showed the deep blue of confidence. What do our sensors show? He asked. The system appears to be abandoned, sir, the officer replied. We are detecting minimal life signs around the main station. Perhaps a few hundred humans at most. This surprised Thexmore slightly. Intelligence reports had suggested Kepler Station housed nearly 50,000 humans and served as a major mining operation. He had expected to find at least some military resistance. Perhaps they fled when they detected our approach, suggested Commander Yilseth, his second in command. The humans may be more intelligent than we thought. Or more cowardly, added Captain Zordon from the communications station. Several other officers made sounds that might have been laughter in their various species. Admiral Thexmore studied the tactical display. The Kepler system contained a main sequence star surrounded by 7 planets and 2 dense asteroid belts. The human mining station was built into the largest asteroid in the inner belt. It looked like any other mining operation he had seen, with docking arms extending from the rocky surface and storage tanks for processed materials. "Deploy the fleet in standard occupation formation," he ordered. "First and second battle groups will secure the station. Third and fourth groups will patrol the outer system. Fifth group remains in reserve." The Council fleet moved like a well-trained dance troupe, ships spread out in predetermined patterns, each captain knowing exactly where to position their vessel. It was a formation they had used hundreds of times before during peacekeeping operations across the galaxy. As they drew closer to Kepler Station, Admiral Thexmore felt a growing sense of unease. Something about this felt wrong. In his 400 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the asteroid belt." "Define unusual," Thexmore replied. "It's difficult to explain, sir. The asteroids themselves seem to be generating small amounts of power, but that should be impossible unless—" The sentence was never finished. The asteroid belt around them suddenly came alive with light and fire. What Admiral Thexmore had taken for ordinary space rocks were revealed to be something much more dangerous. Dozens of asteroids split open like giant eggs, revealing human warships hidden inside. But these weren't the small, primitive vessels the Council had expected to find. The human ships that emerged were sleek and deadly, painted black to blend with space itself. They moved with impossible speed and grace, accelerating in ways that should have crushed their crews. As they burst from their hiding places, they opened fire immediately, but they weren't using normal weapons. Instead of the energy beams or plasma cannons favored by most galactic species, the humans fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The railgun rounds punched through Council ship shields like they weren't even there, leaving gaping holes in hulls that had been considered nearly indestructible. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Thexmore shouted, but his perfectly ordered formation was already falling apart. The human attack was unlike anything in the Council's military databases. There was no formal challenge, no declaration of combat intentions, no opportunity for surrender. The humans simply appeared and began killing with the efficiency that terrified the veteran admiral. Forthak crystal ship to his left suddenly exploded in a shower of rainbow fragments as 3 human vessels concentrated their fire on its weakest point. The humans had studied Council ship designs and knew exactly where to hit for maximum damage. "Sir, they're using some kind of coordinated battle network," his tactical officer reported, fear clear in his voice. "Every human ship knows where every other human ship is at all times. They're fighting like a single organism with dozens of bodies." More Council ships died as the humans pressed their attack. The enemy vessels moved in 3-dimensional patterns that made no sense to minds trained in traditional space combat. They would dive below the plane of battle, loop around behind larger ships, and strike from angles that should have been impossible to achieve. Worse, they were targeting specific systems on each ship. Engines, weapons, life support, command centers. The humans weren't just trying to destroy the Council fleet. They were trying to disable it and leave the crews to die slowly in the cold of space. "Return fire," Thexmore ordered. "All ships concentrate on the nearest enemy vessels." The Council fleet tried to respond, but their weapons seemed almost useless against the human ships. The enemy vessels were smaller and faster than anything in the Council databases. They used their speed and maneuverability to avoid most incoming fire, and when they were hit, their armor seemed to absorb damage that should have crippled them. Admiral Thexmore watched in growing horror as his fleet was torn apart. Ships that had served with honor for centuries were being reduced to scrap metal by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive savages. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Kepler Station," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Thexmore ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human female in military uniform. She appeared to be in her 40s with graying hair and cold, calculating eyes. Behind her, Thexmore could see what looked like a military command center built deep inside the asteroid. "I am Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding officer of Kepler Defense Station," the human said calmly. "Admiral, you are trespassing in human space without permission. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Thexmore stared at the screen in disbelief. His fleet was being decimated, and this human was talking to him as if she held all the advantages. You cannot be serious, he replied. We outnumber you 10 to 1. Our ships are larger and more advanced than anything your species has ever built. The human colonel smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Admiral, you're thinking like someone who fights wars in the old way. Formal battles, big ships trading fire until one side gives up. That's not how humans fight. As if to prove her point, another section of the asteroid belt suddenly revealed itself to be artificial. What had looked like ordinary rocks were actually weapon platforms built into the asteroids themselves. Massive railgun batteries opened fire on the Council fleet from multiple directions. The hidden guns were enormous, far larger than anything that could be mounted on a ship. They fired metal slugs the size of ground vehicles at significant fractions of light speed. When the projectiles hit Council vessels, the results were catastrophic. Entire ships simply vaporized under the impact. We've been preparing for this day since we first met your Council, Colonel Chen continued as explosions lit up space around Thexmore's flagship. We studied your ships, your tactics, your weaknesses. We turned this entire system into a trap, and you flew right into it. Admiral Thexmore realized with growing horror that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans hadn't abandoned Kepler Station. They had turned it into a fortress and used it as bait to lure the Council fleet into a killing ground. Sir? His tactical officer called out urgently. We've lost over 600 ships. The fleet is requesting permission to withdraw. The Admiral looked at his displays. The perfectly organized Council formation had become a scattered mess of burning ships and debris. Human vessels darted between the larger Council ships like wolves among sheep, striking fast and hard before disappearing back into the chaos. All ships, he ordered with a heavy heart. Full retreat. Emergency jump to Rally Point 7. As the surviving Council ships began activating their faster-than-light drives, Colonel Chen spoke again from the screen. Admiral, when you report back to your Council, make sure you tell them exactly what happened here. This was just a single human colony, barely defended by our standards. If you want to see what our real military can do, please feel free to continue this war. The transmission cut off just as Thexmore's ship jumped to safety. Behind them, Kepler Station continued to exist, still in human hands, surrounded by the wreckage of what had been the pride of the Council fleet. In the aftermath of the battle, rescue ships from both sides worked to save survivors from the vacuum of space, but the damage was done. Of the 2,000 ships that had approached Kepler Station with such confidence, fewer than 300 limped away from the system. Admiral Thexmore sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports with disbelief. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive circular room, their voices creating a symphony of anger and fear. Some spoke in musical tones, others in harsh clicks and whistles, but the message was the same in every language. Humanity had to be stopped. High Counselor Vexithera of the Ancient Makers floated above the central platform, her energy form pulsing with barely controlled rage. She had lived for over 2,000 years and had never seen such a humiliating defeat as the one at Kepler Station. The human infestation has gone too far, she declared, her voice echoing through translation devices around the chamber. They have destroyed 1,300 of our finest ships and killed over 40,000 of our people. This cannot stand. Ambassador Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire stood to speak, his crystal body darker than usual, reflecting his mood. High Counselor, with respect, perhaps we underestimated their capabilities. Their tactics were unconventional. Unconventional? Roared General Mordak of the War Clans, his massive bulk shaking with fury. They hid inside asteroids like cowards. They used projectile weapons like primitives. They showed no honor, no respect for civilized warfare. And yet they won, observed Professor Quintel of the Scholar Caste quietly. The small, bird-like alien's words cut through the noise like a knife. Perhaps we need to reconsider our approach. High Counselor Vexthera's energy form flared brighter. There will be no reconsideration. The Council has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not allow one upstart species to destroy everything we have built. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the positions of various fleets throughout Council space. I am authorizing the deployment of the Purge Fleet, she announced. The chamber fell silent. Even among the diverse alien species present, everyone knew what the Purge Fleet represented. It was the Council's ultimate weapon, used only against species that posed an existential threat to galactic civilization. High Counselor, Ambassador Zexhai said carefully, "The Purge Fleet hasn't been deployed in over 800 years. Are we certain this situation warrants such extreme measures? The humans have proven they cannot be reasoned with," Vexthera replied. "They respond to our attempts at peaceful correction with violence and savagery. The Purge Fleet will eliminate their ability to threaten civilized space permanently." What the Council didn't know was that their emergency session was being watched. Deep in space, hidden among the outer planets of the Council's home system, a human stealth ship recorded every word. The ship was so small and well shielded that even the Council's most advanced sensors couldn't detect it. Captain Maria Santos watched the alien deliberations with growing alarm. The Purge Fleet was legendary even among humans. Intelligence reports suggested it contained over 5,000 ships, including planet killers capable of destroying entire worlds. "Get me a secure connection to Earth Command," she ordered her communications officer. "Priority Alpha. Tell them the Council just declared total war." While the Council debated and planned, humanity was already moving. The victory at Kepler Station had been just the beginning. Across human space, colony worlds activated defense plans that had been years in the making. On New Harmony, civilian transports suddenly revealed themselves to be carrying military equipment instead of trade goods. Mining ships in the outer systems began deploying sensor networks that could track Council fleet movements across dozens of light years. Space stations that appeared to be simple research facilities opened hidden weapons bays. But most importantly, the human fleet began doing something the Council had never seen before. Instead of waiting for the enemy to come to them, human ships launched preemptive strikes across the galaxy. The first target was a Council supply depot near the edge of their territory. The facility was massive, designed to fuel and resupply entire fleets. It was defended by a garrison of 50 ships and was considered completely safe, being located far from any human colonies. The attack came without warning. 3 human ships appearing out of nowhere struck the depot with surgical precision, but they didn't use conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed a virus into the station's computer systems. Within minutes, the depot's automated systems turned against their operators. Fuel pumps began mixing chemicals that created massive explosions. Cargo handling equipment started firing supplies into space instead of loading them onto ships. Life support systems began venting atmosphere into the vacuum. By the time the garrison ships realized what was happening, it was too late. The depot was destroying itself from the inside, and the human ships had already vanished back into hyperspace. Similar attacks began happening across Council space. Communication relay stations found their signals being hijacked and used to spread disinformation. Automated defense platforms turned their weapons on their own ships. Even civilian facilities weren't safe, as their computer systems were infected with viruses that caused everything from traffic control to food production to fail. The Council had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Humans didn't just attack military targets. They attacked the infrastructure that made civilization possible. They turned the Council's own technology against them, creating chaos and panic on worlds that hadn't seen violence in centuries. But the worst was yet to come. The planet Serenity had been a Council world for over 1,000 years. It was home to the peaceful Harmony Singers, a species that communicated through beautiful music and had never known war. Their cities were works of art, built in perfect harmony with the planet's natural environment. The human attack began with what appeared to be a meteor shower. But these weren't natural meteors. They were human drop pods, small and stealthy, designed to penetrate planetary defenses undetected. The pods didn't contain soldiers. Instead, they carried something much more terrifying: biological weapons designed specifically for the Harmony Singers' unique physiology. Within hours, a plague began spreading through Serenity's cities. But this wasn't just any disease. The humans had studied Harmony Singer biology and created a virus that attacked their ability to create music. The beautiful songs that were the foundation of their civilization became discordant screams of pain. The planet's communication system, which relied on musical harmonies, collapsed completely. Harmony Singers couldn't coordinate relief efforts or even call for help. In 3 days, A civilization that had existed for millennia was reduced to chaos and suffering. When Council relief ships finally arrived, they found cities full of beings who could no longer communicate with each other, their entire way of life destroyed by human weapons they couldn't understand or counter. The psychological impact across Council space was devastating. If the humans could do this to Serenity, they could do it to any world. The galaxy's oldest and most peaceful species began demanding protection, creating panic and confusion throughout the Council's territories. Admiral Thexmore, still recovering from the disaster at Kepler Station, received orders to lead a task force to the human colony of New Geneva. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended, and the Council desperately needed a victory to restore confidence in their military. But when his ships arrived at the system, they found something that defied all logic. New Geneva's star was surrounded by what appeared to be a ring of artificial structures. The ring was enormous, spanning the entire orbit of the system's asteroid belt. "What are those things?" Thexmore asked his science officer. "Analyzing now, sir," came the reply. "They appear to be mirror arrays, massive reflective surfaces designed to focus starlight." The Admiral felt a chill run down his spine. "Focus it where?" His question was answered when the mirrors suddenly adjusted their positions. The combined light of an entire star, concentrated into a beam narrow enough to thread a needle, struck his flagship's escorts simultaneously. The Council ships didn't explode. They simply vaporized, turned into clouds of superheated gas in the space of seconds. The mirrors readjusted and more ships died in flashes of stellar fire. "Full retreat," Thexmore ordered, but it was too late. The mirror array could target anything within the system faster than his ships could escape. Of the 300 vessels he had brought to New Geneva, only his flagship and 12 escorts managed to jump to hyperspace before the stellar laser found them. As his ship fled through hyperspace, Admiral Thexmore realized the horrible truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. They used tactics and weapons that no civilized species would ever consider, turning the Council's own technology and infrastructure against them. But perhaps most terrifying of all, they showed no signs of slowing down. Each attack was more devastating than the last, each new weapon more horrifying than anything the galaxy had seen before. The Council had wanted to teach humanity their place in the galactic order. Instead, humanity was teaching the Council what it meant to face an enemy that refused to accept defeat. No matter the odds, across Council space the message was becoming clear. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that they belonged among the stars, and they would burn down the entire galaxy before they accepted submission. Supreme Admiral Kethavar of the Vorthak Empire stood before the holographic war table in his command center, watching the tactical displays with growing disbelief. The crystalline being had commanded fleets for over 6 centuries, but he had never seen anything like the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. "Show me the latest casualty figures," he ordered his staff. The hologram updated and the numbers were staggering. In just 4 months of warfare, the Council had lost over 30,000 ships and seen dozens of worlds attacked or occupied. But what disturbed Kethavar most wasn't the losses. It was how the humans were achieving them. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we have confirmation that human ships have been spotted using Council technology, specifically hegemony shield generators and Vorthak crystal matrix drives." The Supreme Admiral's body flashed through several colors indicating his emotional state. "That's impossible. Our technology is biometrically locked. Only our species can operate it." "Apparently not anymore, sir," the officer continued. "Human engineers have found ways to modify our systems. They're using our own advances against us, but combining them with their own designs in ways we never considered." Kethavar studied the tactical display showing the latest human ship designs. The vessels were still smaller than most Council ships, but they had grown larger and deadlier with each passing month. Worse, they now incorporated the best technology from every Council species, creating hybrid ships that outperformed anything in the galaxy. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence suggested humanity had barely achieved faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. They should be thousands of years behind our technical capabilities." His chief scientist, an elderly Vorthak named Zilthara, stepped forward. Her crystal body was pale with age, but her mind remained sharp. Supreme Admiral, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood human nature. Most species develop technology gradually, building on the work of previous generations. Humans appear to be different. She gestured, and the display showed human industrial facilities across their colonies. They don't just improve existing technology incrementally. They completely reimagine it. When they encounter something new, they don't ask, how can we use this the same way? They ask, what else could this do? The scientist highlighted several human modifications to Council technology. Look at how they've modified hegemony shield generators. We use them for defense. Humans have weaponized them, creating shield rams that can punch through ship hulls. They took Whisper collective communication technology and turned it into a weapon that can scramble enemy ship systems across entire star systems. Supreme Admiral Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. What about the Purge fleet? Surely 5,000 of our finest ships can overcome whatever tricks the humans have developed. Sir, another officer interrupted. We're receiving an emergency transmission from the Purge fleet. They've reached the outer edge of human space. The holographic display shifted to show the massive Council armada. 5,000 ships from every member species, including planet killers capable of sterilizing entire worlds. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. Fleet Commander Vexthal appeared on the communication screen. The energy being's form was flickering with agitation. Supreme Admiral, we have encountered something unexpected. Report, Kethvar ordered. We approached the human system designated Ross 128, expecting to find a typical colony world with minimal defenses. Instead, we found this. The display changed to show what looked like an artificial asteroid field surrounding the entire system. But as Kethvar studied the images more closely, he realized these weren't asteroids at all. Those are ships, he whispered. Yes, sir, Vexthal confirmed. Over 1,500 human vessels positioned throughout the system. But that's not the strangest part. They're not moving. They're just waiting. The Supreme Admiral stared at the tactical display. The human fleet was arranged in what looked like a defensive formation, but something about their positioning bothered him. It was too perfect, too deliberate. Fleet Commander, what are your sensors telling you about those ships? That's the problem, sir. They're reading as active vessels with full crews, but they're not responding to our communications attempts. They're not even targeting us with their weapon systems, they're just sitting there. Kethvar studied the formation more carefully. The human ships were arranged in geometric patterns that made no tactical sense from a traditional military perspective. But humans, he was learning, rarely did things that made sense to other species. Sir, his science officer called out urgently. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human formation. All their ships are charging some kind of weapon simultaneously. The Supreme Admiral realized what was happening just a moment too late. Vexthal, get your fleet out of there now. The human ships fired as one, but they weren't aiming at the Council fleet. Instead, they were targeting empty space around the Purge fleet's position. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself began to tear. The humans had weaponized faster than light technology, creating artificial tears in the fabric of space-time. The Purge fleet found itself caught in a maze of unstable wormholes that appeared and disappeared randomly around them. Ships that tried to move forward found themselves thrown backwards in time. Vessels that attempted to retreat emerged in different locations entirely. Some ships simply vanished, lost in pocket dimensions that might not even exist anymore. What's happening? Fleet Commander Vexthal screamed through the communication link as his flagship spun helplessly through a temporal anomaly. They've turned space itself into a weapon, Kethvar replied with horror. They're not just fighting us, they're fighting the laws of physics. The Purge fleet, the Council's ultimate weapon, was being torn apart by forces no military strategist had ever considered. Ships designed to destroy planets were being crushed by gravitational anomalies, or stretched across multiple dimensions. But the humans weren't finished. As the Council fleet struggled with the space-time distortions, human ships began appearing throughout the chaos. Not the vessels that had created the trap, but new ships that seemed to emerge from the unstable wormholes themselves. These ships were different from anything seen before. They were larger than previous human designs, and they moved through the distorted space as if the laws of physics didn't apply to them. They fired weapons that seemed to reach their targets before they were actually launched, and they vanished and reappeared at will. "Sir," the intelligence officer reported with a shaking voice, "we're receiving data from the battle zone. The human ships are using the space-time distortions to their advantage. They've found a way to navigate through the artificial wormholes." Supreme Admiral Kethvar watched in stunned silence as humanity's new fleet systematically destroyed the pride of the Council military. The Purge Fleet, which had been expected to end the war in a single devastating campaign, was being annihilated by an enemy that fought with weapons pulled from science fiction nightmares. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked quietly. "Current estimate is over 3,000 vessels destroyed or missing," came the reply. "The remainder of the Purge Fleet is attempting to retreat, but the space-time distortions are making it difficult to establish stable jump points." The Supreme Admiral closed his eyes, though the gesture was barely visible through his crystalline form. In a few hours, humanity had destroyed the largest military force in galactic history, not through superior numbers or better ships, but by rewriting the fundamental rules of warfare. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Vorthak homeworld. It's marked as a planetary emergency." Kethvar felt his crystal heart sink. "Put it through." The display showed the capital city of his homeworld, but something was terribly wrong. The beautiful crystal spires that had stood for millennia were cracking and falling. The harmonic frequencies that kept Vorthak architecture stable were being disrupted by something. "Supreme Admiral," the planetary governor's voice was filled with panic. "We're under attack, but we can't see the enemy. Our buildings are destroying themselves. The harmony crystals that power our civilization are resonating at destructive frequencies." Through the chaos of the transmission, Kethvar could see human ships in orbit around his homeworld. They were broadcasting some kind of signal that was interfering with the quantum frequencies his people used for everything, from communication to construction. "They've found our weakness," he whispered. The Vorthak civilization was based on crystalline harmony, on precise frequencies that kept their technology and even their bodies stable. The humans had discovered this and weaponized sound itself against them. As he watched, the greatest city in Vorthak space crumbled to dust, its crystal towers unable to maintain their structural integrity under the human sonic assault. Millions of his people were dying, not from explosions or fire, but from the fundamental breakdown of everything that made their civilization possible. The communication cut off, leaving Supreme Admiral Kethvar staring at a blank screen. In one day, humanity had destroyed the Council's greatest fleet and attacked the homeworld of one of the galaxy's most powerful species. The Council Emergency Assembly Station hung in the void between galaxies, far from any star system that might become a battlefield. It had been built as a last resort meeting place, somewhere the galaxy's leaders could gather if their very civilization faced destruction. Today, that theoretical crisis had become reality. High Counselor Vexthara materialized at the center of the Great Chamber, her energy form dimmer than it had ever been. Around her, the surviving representatives of the Galactic Council took their positions. Many seats remained empty. Some species had lost their homeworlds entirely, while others were too busy fighting for survival to send delegates. "Fellow beings," Vexthara began, her voice carrying none of its usual authority, "we face a situation unprecedented in our 3,000 years of civilization. In 6 months, the human species has reduced our combined fleets from 50,000 ships to fewer than 8,000 operational vessels." The numbers hit the assembled aliens like physical blows. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were now reduced to scattered refugee fleets, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. Ambassador Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire spoke first. His crystal form cracked and darkened with grief. "High Counselor, my homeworld no longer exists. The humans didn't destroy it. They made it uninhabitable by disrupting the harmonic frequencies that sustain Vorthak life. 3 billion of my people died in agony as their own bodies turned against them." A low moan escaped from the Harmony Singer representative, one of the few survivors from Serenity. Her musical voice was broken, reduced to discordant notes that hurt to hear. "They took our songs," she whispered. "They stole our ability to be who we are." General Mordak of the War Clan slammed one massive fist against his seat's armrest. How is this possible? We had every advantage. Numbers, technology, experience, the support of 47 civilizations. How did we lose to one species of primitives? Professor Quintel of the scholar caste, her small form trembling with exhaustion, answered quietly. Because they're not primitives, General. We made the mistake of equating technological age with capability. Humans may have achieved spaceflight recently, but they've been perfecting warfare for their entire species' history. The professor activated a holographic display showing human military doctrine. While we developed advanced technology for peaceful purposes and only maintained military forces for police actions, humans have spent thousands of years learning to kill each other efficiently. When they reach the stars, they brought that knowledge with them. They fight without honor, General Mordak growled. They use biological weapons, turn our own technology against us, attack civilian populations. No civilized species wages war like this. That's exactly the point, Quintel replied. We've been civilized for so long that we forgot what real warfare looks like. Humans never forgot. They adapted our technology not to maintain peace but to wage war more effectively than anyone thought possible. High Counselor Vex Ithara pulsed with frustrated energy. The question now is not how we lost, but whether we can negotiate a settlement that allows our species to survive. The humans have demonstrated they can destroy us whenever they choose. We must hope they're willing to show mercy. Mercy. Ambassador Zexhi's voice cracked like breaking glass. They turned my world into a resonance weapon that killed billions. They infected entire populations with viruses designed to destroy their fundamental nature. These creatures know nothing of mercy. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The assembled council members looked around in confusion until a voice came over the communication system. High Counselor Vex Thara, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to lower your station's defenses and prepare for boarding. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some representatives demanded they fight. Others called for immediate surrender. But High Counselor Vex Ithara knew the truth that many were unwilling to accept. Lower all shields and weapon systems, she ordered. Humanity has found us despite our hiding in the void between galaxies. Resistance at this point would be suicide. The station's defenses deactivated, and within minutes human ships appeared around the facility. They hadn't jumped in using conventional faster-than-light drives. They had simply materialized from nothing, suggesting they had developed some form of teleportation technology. The human ships that surrounded the council station were unlike anything seen before in the war. They were massive, dwarfing even the largest council vessels, and their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. More disturbing, they moved without any visible means of propulsion, gliding through space as if gravity itself bent to their will. Admiral Chen's voice came through the station's communication system again. Council representatives, you will remain in your assembly chamber. A human delegation will join you shortly to discuss terms. The chamber fell silent as they waited. When the doors finally opened, what entered shocked the assembled aliens more than any weapon could have. The human delegation consisted of only 3 people. Admiral Chen, an older woman with gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Beside her walked a younger man in a civilian suit, who introduced himself as Dr. James Morrison, Earth's chief scientist. The third figure was President Martinez herself, the leader who had refused the Council's original ultimatum. What struck the aliens most was how ordinary the humans looked. After months of fighting against an enemy that seemed capable of impossible things, the Council had expected to meet some kind of super beings. Instead, they faced 3 individuals who could have walked down any street on their homeworlds without drawing attention. President Martinez took her place at the center of the chamber, looking calmly at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. When she spoke, her voice was steady and matter-of-fact. 6 months ago, you gave humanity an ultimatum. You demanded we surrender our colonies, accept your oversight, and submit to 1,000 years of occupation. We declined your generous offer. High Counselor Vex Ithara's energy form flickered nervously. President Martinez, we acknowledge that our initial assessment of humanity's capabilities was incomplete. We're prepared to negotiate a more equitable arrangement. The human leader smiled, but the expression held no warmth. Counselor, there seems to be some confusion about our current positions. You're not here to negotiate with us. You're here to listen to our terms. The chamber erupted in angry voices from various species, but President Martinez continued speaking as if nothing had happened. Humanity requires three things from the Council. First, all human colonies in space claimed by our species will be recognized as sovereign human territory. No Council ships will enter our space without explicit permission. Ambassador HFY spoke up, his crystal form flashing with indignation. You cannot simply claim vast sections of the galaxy for one species. The established systems of territorial division have existed for millennia. Second, Martinez continued, ignoring the interruption, the Council will formally dissolve its military forces. Your species have proven that you cannot be trusted with weapons capable of threatening human civilians. This demand created even more chaos among the assembled representatives. General Mordock roared his protests while others shouted in their various languages. And third, the President said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise, humanity will assume responsibility for maintaining peace and order in this galaxy. The Council system has proven inadequate for dealing with real threats. High Counselor Vexithera's energy form pulsed bright red with fury. You're demanding nothing less than the surrender of galactic civilization to human rule. This is unacceptable. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her expression cold and professional. Counselor, I think you misunderstand the situation. These aren't demands. They're notifications. We're telling you what's going to happen, not asking for your permission. Dr. Morrison activated a holographic display that showed the current military situation across the galaxy. The image was sobering. Human fleets were positioned near every major Council world. While the remaining Council forces were scattered and outnumbered, our analysis indicates that the Council's remaining military assets could be eliminated within 72 hours if we chose to continue aggressive operations, the scientist explained. However, President Martinez believes it would be better for everyone if we could transition to the new order peacefully. President Martinez nodded. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy through fear and destruction. We want to build something better than what the Council provided. But make no mistake, we will have peace on our terms one way or another. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Your species can continue to exist and govern yourselves as you always have. But the era of the Galactic Council imposing its will on others is over. Humanity will ensure that no species can threaten another with conquest or forced submission. Ambassador HFY's voice was barely a whisper. And if we refuse your terms? Admiral Chen answered before the President could speak. Then you'll discover what our fleet can do when we're not holding back. So far we've been fighting a limited war, trying to minimize casualties and preserve galactic infrastructure. The message came through on the deepest encryption channels, marked with every priority code in the Vextar military database. Warprime Zekthar read it 3 times before he fully understood what his field commanders were telling him. The humans were not just winning. They were winning too easily. Impossible, he growled, his clawed hands cracking the armrest of his command throne. Around him, the bridge of the Super Dreadnought extinction hummed with nervous energy as his staff processed the latest reports. Sir, his intelligence officer said carefully, the reports are confirmed. Human forces have retaken 7 systems in the last month. Our casualties are significant. Zekthar's red eyes burned as he studied the tactical displays. The humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They ignored conventional tactics, accepted impossible casualties, and seemed to actually become more dangerous when cornered. What is their weakness? He demanded. Sir, they appear to value the lives of non-combatants above their own survival. When civilian populations are threatened, human units will sacrifice themselves without hesitation. A cruel smile spread across Zekthar's armored face. Then we will give them something to sacrifice themselves for. The order went out across the Vextar Empire. All restrictions on civilian targets were removed. Planet crackers were authorized. Biological weapons were cleared for deployment. If the humans wanted to play protector, the Vextar would make the cost unbearable. General Nam Hyunwoo stood in the ruins of New Geneva Colony, staring at the mass graves that stretched beyond the horizon. The Vextar had used a nerve agent that killed slowly and painfully. Men, women, children, and elderly, none had been spared. 40,000 people, reported Colonel Ryu Sunhee, her voice hollow with rage. They were evacuating when the gas hit. The Vextar just watched them die. Around them, human soldiers moved through the colony with grim purpose. They were not there to grieve. They were there to catalog evidence and prepare for what came next. "Sir," called out Major Seo Jiwoo from beside a partially collapsed building, "we found survivors." In the colony's emergency shelter, they discovered 12 children who had been protected by the building's air filtration system. The youngest was barely 5 years old. All of them had watched their parents die through the shelter's windows. Dr. Park Soyeon, the fleet's chief medical officer, knelt beside a little girl who had not spoken since the attack. The child's large eyes stared at nothing, her small hand clutching a stuffed animal that was stained with ash. "What kind of monsters do this?" whispered Medic First Class Choi Hyun-soo. General Hyun-woo looked at the children, then at his soldiers. Something fundamental had changed in their faces. The professional discipline was still there, but underneath it burned something ancient and terrible. "The kind that just made a very serious mistake," he said quietly. The authorization came directly from Earth Command, signed by every member of the Defense Council and endorsed by the Global Assembly. 3 simple words that changed the nature of the war: Total War Protocols. Admiral Park read the message twice, then sealed it in his personal safe. Some orders were too dangerous to leave lying around. "All ship commanders to report to the flag bridge immediately," he announced over the fleet communication system. Within an hour, every captain and major in the human expedition was gathered in the Indomitable's main briefing room. Park stood before them, his face carved from stone. "The enemy has escalated to biological weapons and genocide," he began without preamble. "As of this moment, all restrictions on human military operations are lifted. We are no longer fighting to liberate territory. We are fighting to end a threat to civilized life." Captain Song Yejin raised her hand. "Sir, what does that mean exactly?" "It means we stop trying to minimize collateral damage," Park replied. "It means we hunt down every Vextar involved in war crimes and we make them pay. It means we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human-protected civilians." The room was silent for a long moment. These were professional soldiers who understood the implications of what they were being asked to do. "Sir," said Captain John Daesung slowly, "the Galactic Council will not approve." "The Galactic Council is not here," Park cut him off. "They did not see those children. They did not count those bodies. We did, and now we act." Colonel Sunhee stood up. "What are our new rules of engagement?" Park's smile was colder than the space between stars. "There are no rules. Find the Vextar responsible for New Geneva. Find them all. Make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when you cross the line with humanity." The hunt began within hours. Human intelligence networks built on decades of espionage training and death world paranoia tracked down every Vextar officer connected to the biological weapons program. The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as the most dangerous species they had ever encountered stopped pretending to be civilized. Captain Baek Jong-ho led Strike Team Alpha to the Vextar research facility where the nerve agent had been developed. The base was hidden in an asteroid field, protected by automated defenses and a full battalion of elite troops. It did not matter. The humans came through the asteroid field like ghosts, using the rock formations for cover and their superior spatial reasoning to navigate the deadly maze. When the Vextar finally detected them, it was too late. "Breach charges set," reported Sergeant Lee Haeyong, ready to make some noise. The assault was not a battle. It was an execution. The humans moved through the facility like a plague, killing everything that moved and destroying everything that did not. They found the research labs where Vextar scientists had tested their weapons on captured Althari civilians. They found the holding cells where children had been kept as test subjects. They found the observation rooms where Vexitar officers had watched the experiments and taken notes. When the facility's commander tried to surrender, offering valuable intelligence in exchange for his life, Master Sergeant Moon Sang-ho looked at the cell full of dead Althari children and shook his head. "No deals," he said simply, and pulled the trigger. The executions were broadcast across Vextar space on their own communication networks. The message was clear. War crimes would be punished. Surrender would not be accepted. Justice would be absolute. Other galactic civilizations watched the human response with growing unease. Ambassador Kim Young-sik tried to maintain diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council, but the questions were getting harder to answer. Are the humans any different from the Vextar? asked Chancellor Veltar of the Centauri Republic during an emergency session. They claim to fight for civilization, but their methods get results, Youngsik replied firmly. Vextar expansion has stopped for the first time in 2 centuries. Civilian casualties in human-protected sectors are down 90%. Sometimes the cure must be stronger than the disease. But at what cost? Demanded Senator Crosland of the Galactic Ethics Committee. How long before humanity decides that other species are threats that need to be eliminated? Before Youngsik could answer, Dr. Soyeon entered the chamber with a datapad in her hands. Her expression was grim as she approached the podium. Honored delegates, she began, I have discovered something that changes the nature of this conflict. The Vextar are not just conquerors. They are refugees. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Dr. Soyeon raised her hand for silence. Our analysis of captured Vextar technology reveals evidence of a greater threat. Something in the galactic void has been hunting them for over 1,000 years. The Vextar Empire is not expanding for resources or territory. They are running from something that makes them look like peaceful neighbors. She activated the holographic display, showing deep space sensor readings that made no sense to conventional science. Whatever is out there, it consumes entire star systems. The Vextar have been fleeing from it, conquering world after world to stay ahead of the destruction. And according to their astronomical data, it is heading straight for the galactic core. The delegates sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. The war they thought they understood had just become something much larger and more terrifying. Admiral Park received the intelligence report while standing over the bodies of Vextar war criminals on a captured battleship. Around him, his Marines were methodically searching the vessel for more evidence of atrocities. Sir, said Captain Daesung carefully, if this is true, if there is something worse than the Vextar out there. Park looked at the tactical displays showing human forces advancing across Vextar space. His people had become very good at war in a very short time, perhaps too good. Then we had better win this fight quickly, he said grimly, because we may need every ship we can get for what comes next. In the depths of space, beyond the reach of any civilization's sensors, something vast and hungry continued its slow approach toward the galaxy. It had consumed 1,000 species over the millennia, and it sensed new prey ahead. Soon the humans would learn that the Vextar had not been the real threat. They had only been the opening act. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood before the holographic display in the fleet's tactical center, studying the red markers that represented Vextar positions throughout the sector. The enemy outnumbered his forces 3-1, with better technology and established supply lines. By every conventional military calculation, the humans should have been planning a strategic withdrawal. Instead, Park was planning something that would have horrified any civilized military commander. The Vextar are concentrating their forces around the major population centers, reported Intelligence Officer Major Kang Soo-jin. They expect us to attack their strongest positions to save the civilians. Which is exactly what we would do, added Colonel Nam Hyun-woo, commander of ground forces. But not the way they expect. Captain Song Ye-jin, the fighter squadron leader, looked up from her tactical pad. Admiral, my pilots are ready for the orbital drops. But the casualty projections are acceptable, Park finished. We did not come here to play it safe. We came here to win. The plan was insane by galactic standards. Lieutenant Colonel Bae Ji-han would lead the first orbital assault drop in recorded history. His paratroopers would fall through a planet's atmosphere in individual pods, landing behind enemy lines with minimal equipment and no backup. Sir, with respect, said Dr. Shin Woo-jin, the fleet psychologist, other species will think we have lost our minds, jumping out of perfectly good spacecraft toward a hostile planet. Let them think what they want, Park replied. The Vextar are expecting a conventional attack. We are going to give them something they have never seen before. Staff Sergeant Oh Minji checked her equipment one final time. The drop pod was barely large enough for one person, packed with just enough supplies for a 3-day mission. Around her, 49 other human soldiers prepared for the same insane descent. Remember, Lieutenant Colonel Ji-han told his troops over the comm system, we are not trying to conquer the planet. We are there to cause chaos, destroy their supply lines, and make them fear the dark. Corporal Seojin laughed grimly. Just another day in paradise, right, Sarge? Minji grinned back. Better than Mars training. At least this planet has breathable air. The drop pods launched from the assault ship Rampart like a swarm of metal meteors. Each pod was designed to survive atmospheric entry and impact, then break open to release its human cargo. The concept was so alien to galactic military thinking that the Vextar did not even have weapons designed to counter it. As the pod screamed through the atmosphere, the humans inside experienced forces that would have killed most other species. But humans had evolved on a high-gravity world, with dense bones and redundant organ systems. What was lethal to others was merely unpleasant to them. Minji's pod hit the ground at over 300 kilometers per hour. The impact drove her deep into her crash harness, but she was conscious and moving within seconds. Around her, other pods were landing in a scattered pattern across 50 square kilometers of enemy territory. "Sound off," Jihan ordered over the tactical network. "Alpha Squad, 4 pods down safe," reported Sergeant Kim Hyun. "Bravo Squad, all present," called out Corporal Han Seojin. One by one, the squads reported in. 3 pods had malfunctioned during descent, but their occupants had survived the crashes. Within 10 minutes of landing, 47 human soldiers were loose behind Vextar lines. The psychological warfare began immediately. Major Lim Taewon had prepared special broadcasts to transmit on Vextar communication frequencies. The aliens communicated through harmonic patterns that were pleasing to their senses. What they received instead was human music. Death metal, war chants, and funeral dirges played at maximum volume. The effect on Vextar forces was immediate and devastating. Their sensitive hearing could not filter out the chaotic noise, and the aggressive rhythms triggered stress responses in their nervous systems. Within hours, entire Vextar units were abandoning their posts to escape the torment. "They are calling it the Screaming Death," reported communications specialist Park Hee-jin, monitoring enemy transmissions. Some of their commanders are requesting reassignment to other sectors. Captain Song Ye-jin led her fighter squadrons in attacks that defied every rule of space combat. Instead of the elegant formations favored by galactic militaries, her pilots flew through asteroid fields, used solar flares as cover, and executed maneuvers that required split-second timing and absolute trust in their wingmen. Viper leader. "This is crazy," transmitted Lieutenant Cho Yuna as her fighter skimmed the surface of a gas giant's moon. "If we miss the atmospheric skip, we will be pancakes." "Trust the math, Viper 2, Song replied calmly. "And trust your training." The human pilots used the moon's gravity to slingshot themselves at impossible angles, coming up behind a Vextar patrol from a direction that should have been empty space. The enemy ships never saw the attack coming. Back on the ground, the paratroopers were living up to their reputation for chaos. Sergeant Hyun's squad had destroyed 3 supply convoys using nothing but improvised explosives and superior fieldcraft. The Vextar were finding it impossible to track humans who thought like prey animals and moved like ghosts. "Contact north, 200 meters, whispered Private Lee Dongjun over the tactical net. "Patrol of 6 heavy weapons." Hyun considered her options. Her squad was outnumbered and outgunned. A conventional military force would have avoided contact and continued the mission. Hyun was not feeling conventional. "Seojun, take your team left. Minji, go right. Wait for my signal, then hit them from 3 sides at once." The ambush lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, 6 Vextar soldiers were dead and the humans had vanished back into the forest without taking a casualty. The enemy patrol that found the bodies an hour later sent a report that made Vextar commanders very nervous. Targets eliminated by unknown weapons. No evidence of enemy presence. Recommend immediate reinforcement of all units. The war was turning psychological. Vextar forces began showing signs of demoralization when facing human units. Intercepted communications revealed that the aliens had started calling humans the nightmare species and were requesting transfers away from sectors where human forces were active. Admiral Park received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. "They are starting to break," he told his staff. "But we need to maintain pressure." "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Kim Dong-yun, "we are receiving a priority message from Earth Command." The holographic display showed Admiral Chen Wei, Park's superior and commander of Earth's defense forces. His expression was troubled. "Park, the Galactic Council is expressing concerns about human tactics," Chen said without preamble. "They are calling your methods unnecessarily aggressive and contrary to civilized warfare." Park felt his jaw tighten. "Sir, we are winning. Vextar forces are in retreat across 4 systems. Civilian casualties are down 70% from last month. I understand that. But some council members are beginning to question whether humanity's cure is worse than the Vextar disease. The transmission ended, leaving Park staring at the tactical display. Around him, his officers waited for orders. "Sir?" asked Colonel Hyunwoo. "Do we modify our tactics?" Park thought about the Althari children in Vextar slave camps. He thought about the peaceful civilizations that would die if the humans pulled back. He thought about his own daughter, safe on Earth because other people were willing to do terrible things to keep her world secure. "No," he said firmly. "We do what needs doing. Let the politicians worry about their reputations. We worry about winning." The next phase of the campaign began immediately. Human forces launched simultaneous attacks on 12 Vextar positions, using tactics that no civilized military would consider. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, and the deployment of berserker protocols that maximize damage even when facing certain defeat. Captain Yim Hejin commanded the destroyer Relentless when it encountered a Vextar battleship twice its size. Her ship was already damaged and outgunned. Standard doctrine called for withdrawal. Instead, she ordered all power to engines and aimed for the enemy's command section. "All hands, brace for impact," she announced calmly. "It has been an honor serving with you." The Relentless struck the Vextar battleship at 1/10 the speed of light. Both ships were destroyed instantly, but the explosion took out 2 escort vessels and scattered a Vextar supply convoy. The Vextar were learning to fear human determination, but they were also beginning to understand something else. These Deathworlders did not fight to win battles. They fought to win wars no matter the cost to themselves, and that made them the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. The first joint operation was supposed to be simple. Captain Jeon Dae-sung led a combined force of human marines and Althari advisors toward Kepler Station, where intelligence reports suggested the Vextar were holding civilian prisoners. What should have been a quick rescue mission turned into a lesson about the difference between civilized discussion and brutal reality. "Captain, I must insist we attempt communication first," said Counselor Lim Jae-hyun, one of the Althari diplomatic team. His silver skin was marked with stress patterns as he watched the tactical display. "Galactic protocols require—" "The protocols got your people enslaved," interrupted Sergeant Kim Ha-yoon, checking her assault rifle for the 3rd time. She was built like all humans who had grown up in Earth's gravity, compact, dense with muscle, and radiating controlled aggression. These things understand one language. Commander Lee Salmon stood in the center of the assault ship's briefing room, surrounded by her Marines and the nervous Althari observers. The plan was displayed on holographic screens. Fast insertion, secure the civilians, extract quickly. "The Vextar have had 3 hours to prepare defenses," Soman reported. "Satellite surveillance shows increased patrol activity and additional weapons emplacements." Dr. Yoon Nari, who had survived the original attack on the Serenity's dawn, spoke quietly from the corner. "There are children in there. Althari children who have never seen violence before." Selman's expression softened slightly. "We will get them out. All of them." As the assault ships approached Kepler Station, the Althari advisors insisted on following proper diplomatic procedure. Captain Dae-sung reluctantly agreed to try negotiation first, despite his tactical instincts screaming that it was a mistake. "Vextar Command. This is Captain Jeon Dae-sung of the United Earth Space Navy." He transmitted on open frequencies. "We are here to discuss the release of Althari civilians under your control." The response came in the form of weapons fire. Plasma bolts lit up space around the human ships as the Vextar opened up with every gun they had. "So much for talking," muttered Lieutenant Park Sun-woo from the pilot's seat. But the delay had cost them. While the humans had wasted time on diplomacy, the Vextar had moved most of the prisoners to more secure locations and executed the rest as examples. When the Marines finally breached the station's outer hull, they found only corpses. 23 Althari civilians dead, reported Corpsman Cho Ming-yu, his voice tight with anger. "Killed in the last hour while we were trying to negotiate." Counselor Jae-hyun stared at the bodies with his large dark eyes. "This cannot be. The Galactic Accords forbid the execution of non-combatants." "There are rules. Your rules do not work on them," Sergeant Ha-yoon said bluntly. She knelt beside a small Althari child, her expression grim. They killed kids while we sat outside talking about protocols. The second wave of the operation went very differently. Intelligence had located another prison facility on the station's lower levels, and this time there would be no diplomacy. "Breach charges ready," reported Corporal Han Seojun from the cutting team. "We go in hard and fast," Solman gave the order. The Marines blew through the outer walls like an unstoppable tide. The Vextar defenders had never faced human close-quarters combat tactics before, and they were not prepared for what hit them. Sergeant Ha-Yun led the first squad through the breach, her weapon spitting fire at anything that moved. The corridor was narrow and dark, perfect for the kind of fighting humans had perfected in Earth's urban warfare zones. A Vextar warrior tried to block their advance, raising an energy shield and calling for reinforcements. Ha-Yun did not slow down. She pulled a fragment grenade from her belt, cooked it for 2 seconds, and threw it past the shield. The explosion dropped the alien and she stepped over his body without breaking stride. "Contact front," called Private O. Minji, spotting movement at the far end of the corridor. "3 hostiles, heavy armor." The Vextar opened fire with plasma rifles, the energy beams lighting up the corridor. The Marines took cover behind debris and corners, but they kept advancing. This was what they had trained for, fighting in confined spaces against superior firepower. Dr. Nari and the other Althari observers watched in horror and fascination as the humans worked. They moved through the station like predators, using the environment as a weapon. When a corridor was blocked, they blew through the walls. When the Vextar tried to flank them, the Marines were already there waiting. "How do they know where the enemy will be?" Nari asked in wonder. "They think like hunters," explained Dr. Shin Woojin, the human psychologist who had remained with the Althari group. "Humans evolved as persistence predators. They track prey by thinking like prey." The rescue team reached the prison block 20 minutes after breaching the hull. They found 47 Althari civilians crammed into cells designed for half that number. The prisoners were weak, frightened, and some were injured from Vextar interrogation techniques. But they were alive. "Get them out of here," Soman ordered. "Ha-Yun, your squad covers the retreat." As the evacuation began, the Vextar launched a counterattack. They had brought in reinforcements from other parts of the station, trying to trap the humans in the prison block. Sergeant Ha-Yun found herself alone in a side corridor, facing 6 Vextar shock troops. Her rifle was empty and she had used her last grenade. By all logical calculations, she should have retreated. Instead, she drew her combat knife and smiled. The Vextar advanced confidently. They were larger than the human, better armored and armed with energy weapons. But they had made a critical error. They thought like civilized beings who fought according to rules. Ha-Yun did not fight fair. She grabbed an injured Vextar and used him as a shield, then drove her knife into the joints of another's armor. When they tried to surround her, she knocked out the lights and fought in darkness, using her superior hearing and spatial awareness. The Althari observers heard the sounds from the corridor. Alien screams, the crash of falling bodies, and something that sounded almost like human laughter. When the lights came back on, Ha-Yun emerged from the corridor, her armor splattered with alien blood and her knife still in her hand. 6 Vextar bodies lay behind her. "Corridor secured," she reported calmly. Dr. Nari stared at the human sergeant in amazement and terror. "How is that possible?" "They were bigger than you, better armed. They were not angrier than me," Ha-Yun said simply. "You do not threaten children in front of a human and expect to walk away." The evacuation continued. The Marines held the extraction point against wave after wave of Vextar reinforcements, fighting with a combination of advanced tactics and primitive fury that the aliens could not counter. Corporal Seojun took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, but kept firing his rifle one-handed. Private Minji ran out of ammunition and started throwing pieces of broken equipment at the enemy with deadly accuracy. When the Vextar brought up heavy weapons, the humans simply got closer, turning the battle into the kind of hand-to-hand combat where human advantages were overwhelming. By the time the last civilian was evacuated, the prison block was a wreck. The Vextar defenders were either dead or had fled to other parts of the station. The human Marines had suffered casualties, but they had completed their mission. As the assault ships pulled away from Kepler Station, Dr. Nari sat in the medical bay, watching Corpsman Mingyu treat wounded Marines. The humans were joking and laughing despite their injuries, as if the brutal fighting had been just another day at work. "I do not understand you," she said to Sergeant Ha-Yun, who was getting stitches in her arm. You fight like demons, but you risk everything to save people you have never met. Hyun winced as the medic pulled the thread tight. That is what we do. Someone has to protect the ones who cannot protect themselves. But the cost to yourself is worth it, Hyun finished. Your people are worth protecting. Your children deserve to grow up free. If we have to be monsters to keep the real monsters away from them, then that is what we will be. The rescue mission had saved 47 lives. But it had also revealed something that made the Galactic community very nervous. The humans were not just willing to fight the Vextar. They were good at it. Very good, and they were just getting started. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, staring at the tactical display. 6 months had passed since Earth received the distress signal from the Althari. 6 months of preparation, debate, and finally action. Now the human fleet hung in space at the edge of what used to be Althari territory. Sensors show heavy Vextar presence throughout the system, reported Lieutenant Commander Kim Dong-yeon from his station. At least 40 capital ships, maybe more. Park nodded grimly. The intelligence they had gathered painted a dark picture. The Vextar Empire had swept through Althari space like a plague, conquering 12 worlds in just 6 months. The peaceful aliens had put up no real resistance. Status report from the fleet, Park ordered. All ships ready for combat, sir, responded Commander Cho Sung-jin. The Defiance reports weapons hot. Iron Will has fighter squadrons prepped for launch. Storm's Edge confirms Marine units standing by. Park looked at the list of ships under his command. 37 vessels, all built for one purpose, war. The humans had been preparing for conflict since they first looked up at the stars. Every ship was armored like a fortress and armed like a predator. The door to the bridge opened and Commander Lee Soman stepped inside. She wore the dark gray uniform of the Colonial Marines and her expression was all business. Admiral, my people are ready, she said simply. Give us a target and we will take it. Park had read Somin's file. Born on Luna Colony, trained in the harshest conditions Earth could create, she had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the asteroid belt conflicts. To her, war was just another job that needed doing. First contact protocols are still in effect, Park reminded her. We need to link up with surviving Althari forces before we engage the enemy. The tactical officer spoke up. Sir, we are receiving a transmission. Althari frequency. Put it on screen. The main display flickered, then showed the bridge of what looked like a dying ship. The alien speaking had silver skin and large dark eyes. His ship was clearly damaged, with sparks flying from broken equipment behind him. Unknown vessels, this is Minister Choi Hyuk of the Althari Resistance Fleet. Are you responding to our distress signal? Park stepped forward. Minister Hyuk, I am Admiral Park Ji-ho of the United Earth Space Navy. We received your call for help. The alien's eyes widened. Earth? But your system is marked as a quarantine zone. How did you— We got your message, Park interrupted. We are here to help. What is your current status? Minister Hyuk seemed to struggle with what he was seeing. You are from the Death World? But how do you survive? Our records say Sol 3 has 3 times normal gravity and poisonous air. Commander Somin stepped into view of the camera. We do not just survive, Minister, we thrive. Now tell us where the enemy is. The Althari stared at her in amazement. Somin was typical of humans who grew up in high gravity. Her bones were dense, her muscles were thick, and her movements had the controlled power of someone who fought against physics every day. The Vextar main fleet is orbiting Althar Prime. Hyuk said weakly. They have taken most of our people as slaves. Those of us who escaped are hiding in the asteroid belt. But we have no weapons. We are scientists and artists, not warriors. Park nodded. We understand. We will handle the fighting. But first, we need to know everything about Vextar tactics and capabilities. Over the next hour, Minister Hyuk and his staff briefed the humans on their enemy. The Vextar were conquerors who had been expanding across the galaxy for centuries. They used superior numbers and advanced technology to overwhelm peaceful species. They took survivors as slaves and stripped conquered worlds of resources. They believe that might makes right, explained Dr. Shin Woo-jin, the fleet's xenopsychologist. After studying the data, classic predator species mentality. They see the Althari as prey? Admiral Park called his senior officers together in the briefing room. The holographic display showed the Vextar positions around Althar Prime. Recommendations? He asked. Captain Song Yejin, commander of the carrier Apocalypse, spoke first. Hit them fast and hard. Use our fighter squadrons to disrupt their formations, then bring in the heavy ships. The Vextar outnumber us significantly, pointed out Captain John Desung of the assault ship Rampart. We need to be smart about this. Commander Soman leaned forward. What do we know about Vextar combat doctrine? Dr. Shin consulted his notes. They prefer overwhelming force. Standard tactic is to surround the enemy and attack from all sides. They have never faced an enemy that fights back effectively. Then we give them something new to think about, Park decided. Soman, I want your Marines ready for boarding actions. Song, your fighters will create chaos in their formations. The rest of us will punch through their lines and get to the civilian evacuation sites. The battle plan was classic human strategy. Aggressive, direct, and willing to accept casualties to achieve objectives. The Althari observers looked worried. Admiral, Minister Hyok said carefully. Perhaps we should try to negotiate first. The Vextar might be willing to— No, Park cut him off. We tried peaceful contact. They responded by jamming our communications and targeting our ships. The time for talking is over. As the human fleet prepared for battle, the cultural differences became clear. The Althari spoke of harmony and consensus. They wanted to find a solution that worked for everyone. The humans spoke of tactics and firepower. They wanted to win. I do not understand, one young Althari scientist said to Commander Somin. How can you be so calm about violence? Somin looked at him with patient eyes. Because someone has to be. Your people are beautiful and peaceful. They create art and music and explore the stars for knowledge. But that makes them targets for predators like the Vextar. She gestured toward the tactical display. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages, plagues, earthquakes, storms. We learned that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to be very, very dangerous. The alien shook his head. But the cost of not fighting is higher, Soman said firmly. Ask the Althari children in Vextar slave camps. As the human fleet moved toward battle, long-range sensors picked up Vextar communications. The enemy was confused by the new arrivals. Their databases had no record of Earth ships or human capabilities. They are trying to scan us, reported the sensor officer. But our hull armor is reflecting most of their probes. Admiral Park smiled grimly. Human military technology had developed very differently from the Galactic standard. Where other species built elegant ships for exploration, humans built ugly, functional warships designed to survive and fight. All ships, battle stations, Park ordered. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. The Indomitable led the human fleet toward the enemy, its hull scarred from countless battles and its weapons charged for war. Behind it came ships with names like Defiance, Iron Will, and Storm's Edge. Each one carried crews who had grown up expecting to fight for survival. The Vextar were about to learn a hard lesson. They had spent centuries conquering peaceful civilizations. Now they faced a species that had never known peace, that had been forged by struggle and hardened by loss. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were not impressed. The crystal walls of the Serenity's dawn vibrated with each blast from the enemy ships. Kang Minho pressed his webbed fingers against the communication console, his silver skin glowing with stress patterns. Around him, other Althari crew members floated in their organic pods, their large eyes wide with fear. Another hit to the rear section, called out Navigator Yeon Jisoo, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Althari had never built ships for war. Their vessels were works of art, designed for exploration and wonder, not survival. Minho watched the tactical display with growing horror. 12 red dots surrounded their ship, each one representing a Vextar warship. The enemy vessels looked like metal beetles, all sharp angles and weapon ports. They had been hunting Althari ships for months now, and none had escaped. Communications are still working, Minho said, trying to keep hope in his voice. I can send a distress signal. Dr. Yoon Nari floated over to him, her research equipment still clutched in her delicate hands. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. Her job was to learn about new species, not watch her people die. Who will answer? Nari asked. The Galactic Council declared our space too dangerous. No one is coming to help us. Another blast rocked the ship. The lights flickered and some of the crystal panels began to crack. Through the transparent hull, Minho could see the dark shapes of Vextar ships getting closer. Their hulls were covered in spikes and looked like they were made for causing pain. I have an idea, Nari said suddenly. She pulled up a star chart on her portable screen. There was a signal we detected 6 months ago. It came from a restricted system. Minho looked at the coordinates she showed him. The system was marked with red warnings in the Galactic database. Sol 3, he read aloud. Status, quarantine zone. Reason, death world classification. What does that mean? Asked Yeon-Jisoo, drifting closer to look. It means the planet is so dangerous that no civilized species should go near it, Nari explained. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme weather, and inhabited by something called Terrans or humans. The ship shook again, harder this time. Warning lights began flashing all around them. The Vextar were preparing to board. The signal we detected was very strange, Nari continued quickly. It contained mathematical sequences, music, and what looked like scientific data. Someone intelligent lives there even if the planet is deadly. Minho stared at the coordinates. It was crazy to send a distress signal to a death world, but what choice did they have? Boarding pods detected, announced the ship's gentle AI voice. Impact in 30 seconds. The Althari looked at each other with their large, dark eyes. They were a peaceful people. They solved problems by talking and thinking together. They had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight. Minho made his decision. His fingers danced over the communication controls, setting up the most powerful transmission their ship could manage. To anyone who receives this message, he began recording. We are the Althari of the vessel Serenity's Dawn. We are under attack by the Vextar Empire. They have destroyed our worlds and killed our people. We have no weapons and no way to defend ourselves. The first boarding pod crashed into their hull with a sound like breaking glass. The Althari flinched at the violence of it. We do not know who you are or what your world is like, Minho continued, but our sensors show that you have technology and intelligence. Please, if you can hear this, we need help. The Vextar will not stop with us. They want to conquer everything. Dr. Nari added her voice to the recording. We are scientists and artists. We have never hurt anyone. All we want is to live in peace and learn about the universe. But the Vextar see us as weak. They take our people as slaves and destroy our beautiful cities. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the ship. The Vextar were breaking through the hull. We are sending you everything we know about the Vextar, Minho said, uploading files as fast as he could. Their ship designs, their weapons, their tactics. Maybe this information can help someone stop them. Yeon-Jisoo looked toward the corridor where the boarding was happening. They are almost through, she whispered. Minho finished the upload and began the transmission sequence. The powerful signal would reach the Death World in about 3 months, traveling faster than light through the galaxy's communication network. Please, he said into the recorder. We know you do not know us. We know your world is marked as dangerous, but we are desperate. Our children are dying. Our culture is being destroyed. If there is any kindness in your hearts, please help us. The transmission launched just as the Vextar broke through the final barrier. The aliens poured into the control room like a black tide. They were tall and covered in dark armor that looked like insect shells. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but their red eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. The lead Vextar spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Surrender and you will be processed quickly. Dr. Nari stepped forward, her slim form shaking but her voice steady. We are non-combatants. Under galactic law, you cannot. The Vextar leader raised his weapon. Your law means nothing now. As the energy blast hit her, Nari fell to the crystal floor. Minho and Yeon-Jisoo were grabbed by armored claws and dragged away. The beautiful ship that had been their home was now just another Vextar prize. But the signal was already traveling through space, carrying their desperate message toward a planet that might not even care. Sol 3 was listed as a death world for good reason. Nothing civilized could survive there. What Minho did not know was that the beings on Sol 3 had a different definition of civilized. They had spent thousands of years learning to survive on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had fought ice ages and plagues, storms and earthquakes. They had learned that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent was to become very dangerous. The signal raced through the void, carrying hope toward a species that the galaxy feared to contact. Soon the Vexitar would learn why Earth was marked as forbidden territory. Soon the Deathworlders would answer the call,